Welcome to the Deep Impact Investing Podcast with Kimberly Griego-Kiel of Horizon Sustainable Financial Services. In this podcast, we discuss sustainable impact investing, creating portfolios that match your values, and a variety of other topics such as financial education, social justice, and sustainable food systems. Do you want to know if your investments seek the kind of accountability from corporations that you demand? Listen in as we explore the burning question, are you investing like you give a damn?
Hello and welcome to Deep Impact Investing with Kimberly Griego-Kiel from Horizon Sustainable Financial Services. Kim, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's early for me. We don't usually record this early in the day.
Has the
I am
coffee
not.
kicked in?
I am on my second cup. I am not
Nice.
a morning person, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
And I am doing this recording from our camper,
I love technology.
right?
This
The
is
digital nomad thing. And
Yeah.
here I am doing the recording.
Off the beaten path. Love it. I
Yeah.
kind of always thought you as somebody who just was totally like, you could go camping in a drop of a hat. You could,
Oh,
go hike someplace.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love camping. When I was a kid, that was what we did for vacations was camp. And I have such fond memories of that. I will say at my age though, sleeping on the ground, not a favorite thing.
Okay.
So the camper's great.
That's funny because my next question was, what age were you when the air mattress was no longer an option or the rolled bed was no longer an option? And I'll just be very transparent. For me, it was about 37.
Yeah. I was going to say probably early 40s. I was like, no.
Yeah.
And then, we did continue to camp, but we bought a really nice air bed for camping.
Okay. There you go.
So that worked for a while, but
Yeah.
that is not what we're here to talk about today.
Okay. Well, sorry, we got off track. What are we going to talk about today?
So today we're going to talk about, it's November and this is on a lot of people's minds. So we want to talk about year-end giving.
Okay. Nice.
Charitable
Love
giving.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right now, for the next 2 months, people are going to get email after email after email from a lot of different organizations that want you to contribute to them, give them money.
I would absolutely love that if it would take the place of all the political crap that I get in my
Oh my
mailbox
gosh.
right now.
Yes.
Bring it on, charities. Bring it on, because
Right.
if you can drown out those yahoos,
Right.
please.
Oh, yes. Well, we're just a few days away from Election Day, and so we'll hope that goes away. And texts. Oh my gosh, I get so many texts.
Yes.
So, and before I go on to the charitable giving, I just want to say, if you hear snoring, it's my pug.
It's not either one of us.
No, usually when I record, I lock her in another room because she snores really loud and I can hear her right now. So she's literally under my feet. We'll see what happens.
Keep your feet warm. That's the important. That's the pug's job.
Absolutely. All right. Charitable giving. We all get these emails. We think about it. And I just want to say, in terms of how that relates to investing, there are a couple different ways that you can do your year-end charitable giving. One, of course, is cash. A lot of places want you to give them cash because they can use that, if it's unrestricted, for anything that they might need.
Yep.
Which is great. There's so many different organizations out there, and we're going to talk about that a little more in a minute. There's also the type of year-end charitable giving where there are food drives and coat drives. And that's actually a really great time to clear out your closet,
Yep.
or your pantry. I will say that one of the local food organizations in Santa Fe does prefer to get cash rather than a jar of peanut butter.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And you know why, right?
Well, the dollar for them goes a lot farther than the dollar for us, quite honestly. If we can donate 1 jar of peanut butter, if we donated the cash that costs to buy that peanut butter, they could probably get 2 jars of peanut butter, quite honestly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, while they're not going to turn away a jar of peanut butter, We gave away a number of things that were unopened in our pantry as we were moving,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what we're in the process of doing, right? From state to state. Nobody wants to lug a lot of food.
Exactly. Yeah.
Plus there wasn't a room. So we gave that stuff away, which is great. But again, a lot of these organizations, especially when you're talking about food systems and food organizations, nonprofits in the food sector, cash is king.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To use a odd investment phrase I've heard before.
Well, I mean, but the thing is that it's possible through our conversations. I know this. It's possible to, and I'm using air quotes on a podcast, give cash in a way that works really well for whether it's your taxes or your overall investment plan, right? There's ways that you can kind of give cash while not actually handing them cash.
Exactly. So I want to talk about some of those things in terms of tax benefits as well.
Okay.
So when we're looking at tax benefits, if you keep track of your annual cash charitable giving, you can write that off on your taxes. Now, again, I want to mention, even though I say this at the end of the podcast, I'm not a tax advisor. So please check with your personal CPA or tax advisor before doing any of these potential charitable giving things that we might discuss. Now, when we're getting to the end of the year, it doesn't quite look like we're going to see as much of this in 2022. But if we look at last year, for example, there were a lot of people with huge capital gains that they were holding in their investments. One of the things you can do is, if your charitable organization that you're interested in giving to has their own investment account, you can donate appreciated stock to that nonprofit, which is a great way to save taxes for you. And the nonprofit does not pay taxes on that. So when they sell those stocks that you've gifted, they're not going to pay the capital gains that you would have to pay. Great way to pass on that tax burden, which actually goes away for those nonprofits. So, we have a lot of clients who get to the end of the year and say, I want to donate this stock or that stock. And we really work to make that happen for them. It's been interesting over the years to see some of the organizations that people donate stock to. Have you ever done that? Have you ever donated stock?
I've never donated stock, and mainly because I've never had accounts with individual stock, right? We obviously everything was wrapped up in 401ks or things that wouldn't have been something where we could donate like that.
Yeah. So for people who do not have the ability to donate stock, and there's a lot of people out there, maybe they're in their early 20s, mid 20s, and they still want to participate in supporting nonprofits that they believe in. Cash. Again, as we mentioned, donating even as little as $10 a month. Most organizations will have ways that you can give monthly. And I do that to a number of places. 3 right now, I think, that I'm giving monthly donations to. And that does help a little bit in terms of the ow factor, or waiting till the end of the year and saying, oh my gosh, I really wanted to give $150 to this organization, but I don't have that. And then the $200 for that one. And then, so if you're doing a monthly giving campaign, so much easier on the budget.
Yeah. And you can absolutely budget for it. Right. And
absolutely.
And a lot of them, I'm assuming, are just going to be automatic, right? It's automatic deduction, however you're doing it. So it's kind of sight unseen, right? Since it's already gone, you didn't count on it anyway, and you're doing good.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about some of our favorite charitable organizations. If you want to, you don't have to share, Eric, but you do usually like to. So we'll give you that opportunity as well. So in the last couple of years, I have personally been giving to an organization, two different organizations actually, that help young girls in Southern Africa. And I've learned a lot connecting with these organizations, and I wouldn't have known about them except that one of them contacted me personally and wanted to be on the podcast, and I fell in love with the organization. So we do have a recording that we did with them. I think it came out in January 2021, or maybe it was 22. I am losing track. We're on podcast 80.
Yeah, ton of them.
Right. So I think when you're looking at charitable giving, it's important to match those organizations that you want to give money to your personal interests, just like we talk about with your investments. And I want to also stress, if it's an organization that you don't know much about, you can get a copy of their 990 filing, which they file with the IRS every year. And that will tell you how much money is going to the organization, how much is going to overhead, how much is going to salaries. So you can get a better sense of the work that that organization might be doing. And I think it's a good thing to do, especially if it's a new organization to you. Or one that's not local. It's easy with local organizations. I think it's easier to get a better sense of what they're doing in your community.
I got to tell you something.
Yes.
There's a lady on TikTok that is.
Oh, no.
No. This is what she does. She actually gets the 990s and she reads them and she shows you the lines and she'll tell you what the charity is doing and what the salary is and how much they got in contributions and so on and so forth. And she has really called, it doesn't look like she has a ton of followers at this point, but as people understand it more, she's really calling some of these charities on the carpet. I'm not going to name any of them, but there was a couple that she absolutely called on the carpet, and it was, oh, well, here's how much they brought in, and the salary for the main person running it, I don't know if you call it CEO or whatever, their salary is $750,000 a year. And you're like, really? This is what you're doing with this money? And it's she doesn't actually make any judgments on it. She's just all factual. So here's the thing. Here's what they brought in. Here's what they're paying out in salaries. Here's what actually went into the community or went into these multiple communities. And it's eye-opening. And she's highlighted some that are really, really good as well. So it's eye-opening because people just don't know. I'm donating this money. How much of your dollar is actually going to the people that you are thinking that you're helping? If you donate $1 and 11 cents of that dollar goes to help people, that's a problem.
It is a problem. You're right.
Problem.
And we do see that in some organizations. And so as you're just pointing out, it's a really good idea to do a little bit of research if it's an organization you don't know anything about.
Yep.
And I'm just going to say, Eric, somehow, some way, I think you're going to get me on TikTok. You bring up these things all the time. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I really need to see this. Oh, but TikTok, it can be a trap. It can. And am I too old for TikTok?
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Are you too old to learn?
Well, no.
But there you go. Because there's so much cooking on TikTok. There's like DIY on TikTok. There is a lot of garbage there. Don't get me wrong. It can be a complete trap of just junk. However, you get to choose who you follow, and that helps to, show on your feed what you actually like. And so,
that's true. And I'm thinking about social media, which for some people is overwhelming, and other people you're starting to despise it with some of the changes going on. And we won't mention any company in particular that just had a major change in management and ownership. But, people do get overwhelmed in the social media sphere. And I think as long as we are being cautious and just a little bit judgmental, maybe, on what we're watching, maybe judgmental isn't the right word, but, we need to really focus on what's real and what isn't. So Let's
Yep.
talk about some real organizations that, for me personally, have been life-changing. They've been life-changing. And just looking at the work that they're doing, here's an example for me. In Santa Fe, where I used to live just a month ago, that, for me and my wife, we've been donating to what used to be, a women's crisis center, but now it's a service for anyone in crisis. So children, couples, adults of any gender, and they're there for people who have been through some sort of major crisis in their life. And I, I have used their services in the past. Now it's been more than 20 years, but I think when you have that direct experience with an organization, you feel connected to it. And and then you want to volunteer and get involved. And I think that is a process that some people take. Other people, and I have some clients who have significant amounts of money and want to donate that to different organizations, they get a little overwhelmed, to be honest with you. And this has been my experience. Where do we give? How do we give? I'm interested in this thing, climate change comes up a lot. I'm interested in women's issues. I'm, whatever it happens to be. And there is a lot out there.
Yeah.
To be honest. So, when these clients come to me and say, where do I give? What's the best way? Do I do stock to this organization? Is it cash? Is cash better? I have had a couple of clients that we have sat down and researched charitable organizations, both locally and nationally, well, internationally as well, and helped them focus on their charitable giving plan. It's fun. I like it.
That's
it's
good.
Research. Yeah. And, one of the things about doing that work is I have been exposed to a number of nonprofits that I didn't know anything about, which is really helpful for other clients. So charitable giving planning is certainly part of the process that we can do for clients at Horizons. So just keep that in mind. Next time you don't know what to donate to, Eric, I gotcha.
Got me. You got me.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to just mention a website that I have. In a past life, I did some stuff with some charitable work, and one of the websites that they used to help people find charities that they liked and that did the research was Charity Navigator. Have you heard of that?
I have not. I'm writing that down.
Yep, charitynavigator.org. And that is one site that you can go and you can look up your charity and it will give you the rating that they have. They open the 990s and they go through the 990s and they report what they find. Right. Yes. So there's a couple different sites that do that. Another site that, as I was just looking at, is givewell.org.
Yes.
And I don't know that one.
I've heard of. Yes.
Okay. And I don't know that one as well. But I know that the folks that we were working with, they got into Charity Navigator and they found a lot of great information, and they found some charities that they're like, wait a second, they're thinking about giving to, and then they realized not as much of my dollar goes to where it's supposed to go to. So they avoided that one and they give other suggestions and, so if you want to end hunger, right? They have, that's a category. So you just look at all these different charities and you can figure out which one you want to give to, where your dollar is going to have the most impact, or maybe it's localized specifically. There's one for Africa. There's one for, I saw one for Haiti. So it depends on where you want to give to and what you want to do. There's different charities for that, and they'll give you the ranking and tell you why they ranked them like that. So there's a lot of good information out there.
Excellent. Eric, I think this is a great time to introduce a guest that I had hoped to bring on for today.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah. And so let's bring him on. His name is Jack Chellman. And Jack, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That's perfect. It's Chellman. Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah. So Eric and I have been chatting about different ways people can do charitable giving, different types of charitable giving. And when you contacted me about the nonprofit you work for, I was incredibly fascinated by the process that you do. It's not just giving to a single charity.
Right.
And I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk about what you do, but what you're really focused on, your organization, the Global Returns Project, is different solutions for our environment based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, 4 of those. So Jack,
Exactly.
why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Absolutely. Well, delighted to. And what an interesting and important topic in terms of charitable giving. I mean, we think a lot about this and the relevance of, charitable giving, especially as you mentioned, when it comes to the climate, the relevance for investing. And what we talk about a lot is, obviously all kinds of charitable giving is really important, right?
Right. Yeah,
But,
exactly.
to us, there's an even, almost more important sort of focus that needs to be placed on, the charities, the not-for-profit organizations that are tackling the climate crisis. And
That
and and why raise those, out from anything else? What we talk about is, there are certain climate solutions when you think about what are the things that are really going to make a difference on tackling climate change. There are certain climate solutions that charitable organizations are really, the best ones. They're best poised to address them, and they do it, faster than governments. They do it more effectively often than market mechanisms like sustainable investing, even though that's obviously extremely important as well.
of course it is, because that's what I do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what we say is you have to have all of it, right? But
Right.
too often people forget about the charitable part. And to us, it's so important that we try and talk about climate charities a little bit differently. And we try and bring them, rather than just talking about them as a form of philanthropy, we actually really, as you know, Kim, we try and bring them into conversations about asset allocation. And our
I I love that approach because, as you said, a number of people think, well, I'm doing sustainable investing with this money and I'm very focused on the impact that I want that to happen. But how much are they giving to charities that are fighting, especially the climate crisis or against other issues that might be top of their mind? I want to talk about the portfolio because we don't call this an investment. If people decide they want to give to the Global Returns Project, not you personally, but your organization creates this portfolio. So tell us about the portfolio.
Absolutely. So just, I mean, if we think about climate nonprofits, climate charities as this sort of new form of quote unquote asset class, one that's not giving a financial return, but from our perspective, it gives what we call a global return, which is, enhancing and protecting our planet in a real and identifiable way. Well, if you think about these organizations in that way, then it makes sense to carry that asset allocation analogy even further. And that's really what the Global Returns Project is here to do. It's here to apply a fund management approach to a portfolio, again, quote unquote, portfolio of these climate charities. So we curate a portfolio that we call the Global Returns Portfolio. It's a curated selection of diverse, effective, and scalable climate charities or climate not-for-profits that are doing that work of protecting the planet. And what we talk about is they're regenerating the planet in ways that even the very best sustainable investing, sometimes struggles to do. So this is really a regenerative complement to all of the critical work that sustainable investing does that obviously we need to be mainstream for all investors.
Right.
So
And I want to jump in here because what I like about your organization is folks can give directly to the Global Returns Project, and then you're taking that money and it is going to multiple different nonprofits who are working on climate issues, water issues, land issues. And those, again, as I mentioned, relate to 4 of the UN's SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So climate action, life below water, life on land.
life on land, absolutely. And
And
then and the fourth is clean water and
thank you.
sanitation. And our portfolio focuses on those first 3. And what
Yeah.
we talk about is, these are the SDGs that it's most difficult for even the very, very best sustainable investing to get to. And again, that's not a dig at sustainable investing at all. That needs to be the mainstream. But it's just a reality that, certain climate solutions just don't give a financial return, right? And if
Yeah.
if I can, Kim, there's an interesting example from a portfolio organization that might sort of illustrate this.
Yes. Share that example with us.
That's perfect. One of the organizations in the portfolio is a group of environmental lawyers, and they use the law to help train other environmental lawyers and hold polluters to account and do all these important things. One of the most interesting things they've done is they sued Europe's largest greenhouse gas emitter, which is a coal plant in Poland called Bełchatów.
Nice.
And they ended up, successfully agreeing on the closure of that plant, which should be happening pretty soon. And that's a massive win for the climate, because that plant over its lifetime has emitted over 1 billion tons of CO2.
Wow.
And again,
I have to tell you, my jaw is dropping. They won and they're closing this coal plant. Fantastic.
Absolutely. And it's I talk about that as one of the many sort of success examples from these organizations, because if you think about it, you can't invest in the successful suing and closure of a coal plant, right?
Right.
That's just not an activity that's investable. It's not going to give a financial return, but we know it is extremely effective. So that's the kind of solution that we're looking for in this portfolio.
That's amazing. And, it's, as you said, it doesn't give a financial return, but it's giving a climate return.
Exactly.
We talk a lot on this podcast about what's happening in climate and stopping the rise of our temperatures. And I think that number is, we don't want to get above another 1.5 degrees Celsius from where we are now. It's probably a spot, if we get there, that is unattainable to reverse.
Right.
Right. So when folks give to the Global Returns Project, again, as I mentioned before, they are giving to multiple charities who are working on these climate issues. This is a tax-deductible donation for people in the US as well, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So if I can, let me just sort of explain how it sort of works in practice.
Yes.
So we curate this portfolio. We have a team of world-class climate scientists who are on our technical advisory board. They've helped us develop our own methodology for selecting and assessing these groups. So there's 6 not-for-profits in the portfolio right now. We plan to continue expanding it, and we review the portfolio every 6 months and produce impact reports. So if we find that an organization starts to underperform according to our methodology, we will consider replacing them with an even better performing organization. So that's the portfolio as it is. And when someone contributes, when someone makes a donation, the contribution is split equally among the constituent organizations. Again, there's 6 at the moment. The Global Returns Project itself, which is what I run on a day-to-day basis, we don't take any deductions from donations. So 100% that's donated goes out, split between the constituent organizations. And for US donors in particular, now I'm actually calling, as you might know, Kim, from London. So we're a
Right.
London-based organization, which means that there's just a funny way to donate, but it's actually very simple. And as you mentioned, allows for that tax deductibility. So anyone can go to, there's a URL, which is tinyurl.com/global returns. And that takes you to a form where you contribute through our US affiliate, which is Charities Aid Foundation America. And essentially just donating through CAF America allows US donors to get that tax deductibility and allow the donation to come to these organizations.
That's perfect. And I just want to highlight that something you just said, because Eric and I were just talking about how you review nonprofits and where the money goes, and the different ways people can do that. And you just said that you take $0 from these donations to use for the operations. So you're getting funded for your operations in another way. And I think this is really important. And Eric, as I said, Eric and I have been chatting about that. So can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Yeah. So you don't sound very British. How did you end up working in London with the Global Returns Project? Is this just a passion for you, or?
It's a fair question. You might be able to hear I'm originally from Arlington, Virginia. So yes, the other side of the Atlantic. I ended up coming over to the UK on a 2-year Marshall Scholarship, and that was for my sort of postgraduate degrees. And then I ended up staying because I found this opportunity and actually started working with the Global Returns Project right when it was launched in 2020, end of 2020. And I think I've ended up staying over here in part exactly as you said, because I think this is such an interesting approach. I mean, what I like about what we're doing at the Global Returns Project is it's a pretty, simple idea actually at its heart, which is, treating climate charities like a form of investment and making it easy for people to give to the very best. But, when you think about it, if everybody did that, if that was just a normal part of everybody's asset allocation, giving a very small amount to the best climate charities, that would really be transformative for the way that we, absolutely, the way we think about our investing, and especially, the way that we deal with the climate crisis. And just to sort of wrap up some interesting statistics we think about a lot in terms of what this could mean if everybody did this. First of all, right now, less than 2% of global philanthropic giving goes to climate mitigation efforts. So,
ouch.
Yeah, right. I mean, and again, there's a lot of important philanthropy out there, but that climate mitigation needs to be bigger. And then the second thing is, studies say that nature-based climate solutions alone, if they were properly funded, could help sequester up to 11 billion tons of CO2 every year. And many of the organizations in our portfolio are focused on that kind of nature-based solution.
Amazing. And 11 tons, that's a mind-blowing number. And I just want to also mention here that your website for people who are interested in looking at what you're doing is globalreturnsproject.earth. And there's some interesting statistics on here as well. And people will find how you do what you do, your methodology, all of that. Thank you for sharing the story of how you got involved in this organization. I always find that interesting, and I appreciate knowing that. Eric, do you have any questions for our guest, Jack?
Jack, it's fantastic to meet you. I'm so glad that you joined the conversation today. When it comes to just overall giving, right? What do you think the biggest hurdle for folks is? I mean, is it their concern about not having enough or not having enough for their family, or is it a concern about where the money's actually going to go? What have you seen?
That's a great question, and so nice to be talking with you too, Eric. I mean, our perspective on that is the biggest. Well, first of all, it's worth saying we think a lot about behavioral science. We have a behavioral scientist on our advisory board.
Nice.
And one of the things she's helped us think about a lot is that there's a huge amount of friction involved with the typical process for giving to charities, right? There's friction with, choosing the right one. There's friction involved with finding out if anything has happened, once you make your donation, did the money do what you wanted it to do? And what we're really trying to do here is, reduce all that friction as much as possible. And that's, I think, to answer your question, those are the hurdles we're trying to tackle. So we're trying to say, when it comes to these powerful charitable climate solutions that do so much, we're gonna remove the friction and identify the very best, not just sort of locally, but some of the very best around the world. And we're going to curate a diverse portfolio of them. And then we're going to remove the friction associated with those questions of, well, what's happening? Where's the money going? And that's that fund management approach of reporting on performance. And those are those 6 monthly impact reports that we put out. So what we're really trying to say is, let's just make this as easy for people as possible.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It is. And one quick question, Jack, not only, I mean, obviously you take cash donations. Does the Global Returns Project also take appreciated stock donations?
We, not through the current US donor form as it stands, but what we're really trying to do is, expand and be flexible to people. So, we're relatively early days as a group ourselves, and that's a great point.
Yeah, well, let's work on that too. So thank you so much for joining us, Jack, and just being here today and talking about how giving to nonprofits should be part of your asset allocation. And I do agree with that. So I think it's a wonderful conversation to have had today. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Kim. And just my last point would be, as you know, what we talk about with people is, you don't have to be a multi-billionaire to do something like this. What we say is, if everybody gave 0.25% of their savings and investments every year to something like this, that would really make a difference. And, obviously anyone can start wherever they want, but that 0.25% idea is something that, actually a lot of people could start with something like that and make a difference.
Those listeners who are interested in participating in the Global Returns Project, how do they get a hold of you or the organization to make a donation?
Absolutely. So I'll just sort of reiterate that process for US donors. So the form to donate is tinyurl.com/global returns. And then there's just 2 pieces of information you have to remember from that. You put in the Global Returns Project Limited in the organization name section, along with our charity number, which is 11-86683. And then you put that same information in the grant purpose information. And we're happy to clarify any of that for anyone who'd like to get in touch with us. My email is jack@globalreturnsproject.earth, and I'm always happy to talk with anyone who's interested.
Excellent. And I did see a link as well on the website to go to the donation, I guess, portal. Is that correct?
That's true. The only thing to note there, Kim, is that doesn't take you to the US donor form. So just US donors have to remember, if you want that tax deductibility, it comes through the CAF America form, which is that tiny URL link I mentioned.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that any listener who's interested gets that information. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Jack, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. Of course, Kim, thank you for hosting. It was a great conversation overall. And yes, to the listener, we will try to put as much as we can in the show notes to make it as easy as possible. That was kind of one of the hurdles we were talking about trying to overcome for any type of donating.
Right.
So we'll put that stuff in the show notes as much as we can. Kim, again, thank you so much. And of course, our last thank you goes to you, listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Deep Impact Investing Podcast with Kimberly Griego-Kiel. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Kim comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this actually helps others find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Horizon Sustainable Financial Services, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Deep Impact Investing, the sustainable, responsible impact investing podcast that shows you how to invest like you give a damn. If you have questions about this podcast or topics you'd like to hear addressed on an upcoming podcast, email us at kim@horizonssfs.com. Join the conversation on Twitter at HorizonsSUSTFIN, or give us a call at 505-982-9661. Don't forget to click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. The companies we may speak about during our podcast are not recommendations for investment. Only you and your financial advisor can determine what the right investments are for you. Horizon Sustainable Financial Services, Inc. and its financial professionals do not render tax or legal advice. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the host and/or guest, and does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Horizon Sustainable Financial Services. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. None of this content may be used or duplicated without the express written agreement of the podcast host.